What happens when you pour fermented ash water on a stump 20 yards from your stand and check the camera a week later? Last October, a buddy on a lease in the Mississippi Delta ran this exact test on 3 stumps across a 400-acre bottom. One stump got the fermented ash treatment. One got a $22 commercial mineral attractant from the pro shop. One got nothing. The fermented ash stump had 47 deer visits in 7 days, including 4 different bucks. One of them, a 140 class 4.5-year-old that showed up twice in daylight. The commercial mineral stump had 19 visits, mostly does, mostly at night. The control stump had 6 visits, all incidental trail traffic, same property, same week, same Moultrie cameras on the same settings. The only variable was what went on the stump, and the winning product cost him the price of a campfire and a bucket of water. He called me on a Tuesday evening and said, "I need you to explain to me why this works, because I have been buying commercial mineral blocks for 12 years. And this just outperformed all of them in a week." I told him what I'm about to tell you. And by the end of this conversation, he was angry, not at me, at himself. Because he had been burning oak in his fire pit for a decade and throwing the ash in the woods behind his shed without ever connecting the dots. The trick is old, older than any of us. And the reason it works has nothing to do with ash attracting deer. Ash by itself does nothing. Dry wood ash sitting on a stump is about as interesting to a whitetail as a rock. The magic is in what happens to that ash after you add water and let it sit for 5 to 7 days in a sealed bucket. That process changes the chemistry of the ash into something deer cannot resist. And I am going to walk you through exactly what is happening, exactly how to make it, and exactly where to put it, so you can run your own camera test this season. Stay until the end, because there is a second stage application method that triples the effective life of a single treatment from about 10 days to over a month between applications. And it involves one additional ingredient that costs less than $1. Before you try any of this, check your state wildlife agency website. Mineral licks and mineral-based attractants are classified as bait in several states, and in CWD management zones, additional restrictions may apply. What is legal in Kansas may get you a citation in Wisconsin. 5 minutes of research protects your tag and your record. I would rather you skip this entire technique than use it illegally and lose your hunting privileges. The knowledge is only valuable if you can use it without a game warden writing you a ticket. The science behind fermented ash is mineral chemistry, and it is the same science behind every commercial mineral lick block on the shelf at the feed store. Wood ash from a hardwood fire, oak, hickory, maple, or mesquite, contains concentrated amounts of potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and a range of trace minerals including sodium, manganese, iron, and zinc. These are the exact minerals that white-tailed deer seek out at natural mineral licks, and they are the same minerals listed on the back of every $18 mineral block you have ever bought at Cabela's. When you add water to wood ash and let it sit sealed for 5 to 7 days, the potassium in the ash reacts with the water to form potassium carbonate, which is a strong alkaline compound with a pH above 11. That high pH does 2 things. First, it breaks down the calcium and magnesium compounds in the ash into water-soluble forms that deer can detect through scent at distances of 100 yards or more on a calm morning, roughly the length of a football field. Dry ash minerals are locked in insoluble calcium carbonate. Deer cannot smell them. The fermentation process converts them into soluble ionic forms that volatilize into the air and travel on thermals, which are the rising and falling air currents caused by temperature differences between ground and canopy, the same way any scent compound does. A deer 100 yards downwind on a calm morning with a gentle thermal drift will pick up the mineral signature and investigate the source. Second, the potassium carbonate solution soaks into the wood of the stump and into the surrounding soil, creating a mineral-saturated zone that releases attractant compounds slowly over days as moisture evaporates. Think of it like the oil-based carrier principle from the kitchen mix video. The stump is the delivery system, the fermented ash is the payload, and the slow release from the saturated wood is what keeps deer coming back long after a surface application would have washed away in the first rain. The preparation is simple, but the details matter. You need ash from a hardwood fire. Softwood ash from pine, spruce, or cedar contains high levels of resin compounds that produce a turpentine-like scent that deer associate with conifer habitat, not food or minerals. On a property where pine is the dominant tree species, that scent is neutral. On a hardwood property, it is foreign and potentially alarming. Use hardwood ash. Oak is the best because it has the highest potassium and calcium content of any common firewood species, roughly 6 to 8% potassium oxide by weight. Hickory is a close second at around 5%. Maple works fine. If you burn mesquite in Texas or the Southwest, that works too. The mineral profile is slightly different, but deer respond to it the same way. If your fire pit has a mix, that is fine as long as hardwood is the majority. Scoop about 2 quarts of cooled ash, roughly the size of a large coffee can, into a 5-gallon bucket. Add 1 gallon of water. Stir it with a stick for 30 seconds. Seal the lid tight and let it sit in a cool, shaded location for 5 to 7 days. A garage floor or a shaded spot behind the shed works. Do not let it sit in direct sun because the heat accelerates the reaction past the point where the minerals stay in solution, and you end up with a chalky paste instead of a pourable liquid. Do not open it during that time. The sealed environment allows the alkaline reaction to complete and prevents the potassium carbonate from reacting with carbon dioxide in the air, which would convert it back into insoluble potassium bicarbonate and kill the scent volatility you are trying to create. After 5 to 7 days, open the bucket and you will see a cloudy brownish liquid with a thin crust on the surface. It smells like wet campfire with a sharp alkaline edge, similar to the smell of old-fashioned lye soap. That liquid is your attractant. The solid sediment at the bottom is spent calcium and silica. You want the liquid, not the sediment. Pour the liquid through a piece of cheesecloth or an old t-shirt into a second clean bucket to separate it from the calcium and silate sediment. You will end up with roughly 3/4 of a gallon of strained liquid from the original gallon of water you added. That is enough to treat 3 to 4 stumps at about a pint per stump, roughly the volume of a large coffee mug. The sediment will clog the pores of the stump and reduce absorption if you pour it on unseparated. I made this mistake on my first batch. Poured the whole bucket, sludge and all, onto a stump in central Kansas, and the surface sealed over with calcium paste within 24 hours. No absorption, no slow release. The whole application sat on the surface and washed off in the first rain. Strain it, every time. I wasted a good stump location learning that lesson and had to wait 2 months for the calcium crust to weather off before I could retreat it successfully. Everything in this video, plus 60 more field-tested techniques, is in The Buck Hunter's Bible, 90 pages of deer behavior science, scent control, scouting methods, stand placement, and rut phase tactics with a quick reference card you can take to the stand. Link in the description below, QR code on screen. Placement is where most people who have heard of this trick get it wrong. They pour the liquid on the ground in a circle around the stump. That wastes 80% of the product because the soil absorbs it immediately, and the mineral compounds bond to clay particles in the topsoil, where they stop volatilizing within 24 hours. The correct method is to pour the liquid directly onto the top of the stump itself, slowly, letting the wood absorb it. A stump that has been cut for a year or more has a soft, punky surface layer, which is partially decomposed wood that acts like a sponge. That sponge holds the fermented ash solution and releases it gradually over 7 to 14 days, as ambient temperature and humidity cause evaporation. The stump becomes a slow-release mineral dispenser. I tested this on a lease in central Kansas on 4 different stumps over the course of October and early November last season. The stumps that received the liquid directly on the cut face showed consistent deer activity on camera for 10 to 12 days per application. The stumps where I poured the liquid on the ground around the base showed activity for 2 to 3 days before the trail went cold. Same liquid, same concentration, same property. The delivery surface was the only difference, and I will admit the sample size is small. 4 stumps on one property is not research, but the pattern was consistent enough that I stopped pouring on the ground and only pour on the stump face now. You want a stump that is 12 to 24 inches in diameter, roughly the size of a car tire, with a flat-cut face that can hold liquid without running off. An old fence post stump works. A tree stump from a recent timber harvest works. If you do not have a stump in the right location, Cut a 12-inch section from a fallen hardwood log and set it flat side up where you want the sight. The placement distance from your stand matters. You want the stump 15 to 25 yards from your shooting position, roughly the distance from the pitcher's mound to home plate. Close enough for a clean shot on a deer standing at the stump, far enough that a deer approaching from downwind does not cross your scent column before reaching the stump. The when not to use section is critical here, and I learned it by wasting a month of applications. This does not work in heavy rain periods. A stump that receives a half-inch of rain within 48 hours of application loses most of the soluble mineral compounds to runoff before the wood has time to absorb them deep enough to resist washout. Apply on a dry day with 3 or more days of dry weather in the forecast. If your area is in a wet pattern, wait. The other condition where this falls flat is on properties with supplemental feeding programs, where corn feeders and mineral stations are already established. Deer on those properties have their mineral needs met artificially, and the fermented ash stump cannot compete with a 50-pound mineral block that has been conditioning deer to visit a specific location for months. This technique works best on properties with no supplemental feeding, no mineral stations, and natural browse as the primary food source. Those are the properties where deer are mineral deficient and actively seeking natural lick sites, and the fermented ash stump becomes the most attractive spot on the property within a week. You have probably noticed deer chewing on old bones, licking exposed clay banks, or pawing at the base of burned stumps after a brush fire. That is mineral-seeking behavior. Your grandfather recognized it without knowing the chemistry. He just knew that deer showed up where fires had been, and he set up to hunt those burn sites. The fermented ash stump replicates what a natural burn creates: concentrated soluble minerals in a localized deposit. Except you control where it goes, and you put it 20 yards from your stand instead of hoping a wildfire drops one in your shooting lane. Now, I need to address the elephant in the room because someone in the comments is going to bring it up. Is this baiting? The answer depends entirely on your state. In some states, any substance placed to attract deer is classified as bait, regardless of whether it contains food. In other states, mineral supplements are explicitly exempted from baiting definitions. In a third group of states, mineral sites are legal during the off-season for trail camera use, but must be removed 30 days before the hunting season opener. I cannot tell you which category your state falls into, because there are 50 different answers. Check your state regulations before you do anything. The legal gray area around mineral attractants is not going away, and the responsible move is to know your rules before you start. I run my ash stumps as camera sites during the summer and early fall, and where my state allows mineral sites during season, I hunt over them. Where it does not, I use the summer camera data to pattern deer and then hunt transition routes between the mineral site and bedding 100 yards off the stump. The intelligence the stump provides is valuable even if you never sit within bow range of it. A buddy who guides in northwest Wisconsin runs ash stumps on every one of his client properties as inventory tools during July and August. His camera data from those sites tells him which bucks survived the winter, which new bucks moved in, and which age class is present on each property before he ever hangs a summit stand for the fall. He does not hunt the stump sites. He hunts the travel corridors between them and the nearest bedding area, which are the thick cover zones where deer sleep during the day. That is the intelligence play. And in states where mineral sites are legal during season, the stump becomes a stand site that requires zero maintenance after the initial application. No feeder to fill, no timer to adjust, no batteries to change. Just a stump with minerals soaking into it, doing its job while you sit 20 yards away with your bow. I ran 3 of these stump sites last fall on a lease in northern Ohio, and the total time investment was about 45 minutes across the entire season. Mix 1 batch in September, pour it on the stumps, add the salt, walk away. Check cameras in mid-October, refresh the stumps once if needed. Hunt them in November, 3 stump sites, 45 minutes of total labor, $0 spent. That is the kind of hunting system your grandfather would have appreciated because it respects the 2 things he valued most: time in the stand and money in his pocket. No feeder to fill, no timer to adjust, no batteries to change. Just a stump with minerals soaking into it, doing its job while you sit 20 yards away with your bow. Look, everything I am walking through here is in the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages, scent control, scouting, stand placement, rut tactics, plus a quick reference card for the stand. Link in the description, QR code on screen. The method I promised at the beginning, the one that extends a single application from 10 days to over a month, is the addition of 1 tablespoon of coarse rock salt dissolved into the fermented ash liquid before you pour it on the stump. The salt does something the ash alone cannot. It creates a physical salt crust on the surface of the stump as the liquid evaporates, and that crust acts as a cap that slows the evaporation of the mineral compounds beneath it. Without the salt, the potassium and calcium volatilize freely into the air, and the stump is depleted in 10 to 14 days. With the salt cap, the volatilization rate drops by roughly half, because the salt crystal layer reduces the exposed surface area. The stump still releases mineral scent, but at a slower rate that extends the effective life to 30 to 40 days per application in dry conditions. The other thing the salt does is give deer a reason to physically lick the stump. Ash minerals attract deer through scent. Salt attracts deer through taste. The combination of scent attraction that pulls them to the stump and taste reward that keeps them there creates a site that deer visit repeatedly and stay at for 3 to 5 minutes per visit instead of 30 seconds of sniffing and walking away. That extended visit time is the difference between a deer standing broadside at your stump for long enough to draw your PSE bow and a deer that pauses, sniffs once, and keeps walking before you can get your scent lock arm through the rest of the draw cycle. I cannot overstate how much this matters for bow hunters. A deer that stops at a site for 3 minutes gives you time to wait for the right angle, time to settle your pin, time to let a doe clear the shooting lane before the buck steps forward. A deer that stops for 30 seconds gives you 1 rush shot, or no shot at all. The salt is what buys you that time. I tested the salt addition on 2 stumps in northern Ohio last November. 1 stump got the plain fermented ash. The other got the ash plus 1 tablespoon of rock salt. The plain ash stump went cold after 11 days. The salted stump was still showing deer visits on camera at day 34. I checked that camera every 10 days, which I know is more often than I should, but I wanted to track the decline rate. The plain ash stump peaked at days 3 through 5, and then visits dropped steadily until it was dead by day 11. The salted stump peaked at days 5 through 10, held steady through day 20, and then gradually declined, but was still producing 2 to 3 visits per night through day 34. On day 34, the stump surface still had a visible white salt crust, and the wood underneath was still damp with mineral solution. I refreshed it anyway out of habit, but I think it would have lasted another week. 1 tablespoon of salt, less than a penny's worth, and it tripled the effective duration. A full season of fermented ash stump treatments costs you the ash from fires you were already burning. A bag of rock salt that costs $4 and lasts 5 years, and 1 5-gallon bucket. The commercial mineral attractant alternative runs $18 to $30 per bag, applied monthly for a seasonal total of $70 to $120 depending on how many sites you run. Over 10 seasons of hunting, the commercial route costs you $700 to $1,200. The ash route cost you functionally nothing because you were burning the wood anyway, and the salt was already in your pantry. Think about that for a second. $1,000 over a decade. On minerals your campfire was producing for free. The deer do not care whether the potassium came from a bag with a picture of a buck on it or from an oak log you burned on a Saturday night. The molecule is the same. The deer's response is the same. The only difference is the price tag and the label. My wife saw me straining ash water through a t-shirt into a bucket in the garage last September and asked if I was starting a cult. I told her I was making deer mineral supplement. She said it looked like I was making soup out of a fireplace. She is not wrong, but the cameras do not care what it looks like. They care what it produces. Try this on 1 stump this summer. Run a camera over it for 30 days. Count the visits. Compare it to any commercial mineral site you have ever run. And when the results come in, ask yourself why you have been paying $25 a bag for something your campfire has been making for free every weekend since you started hunting. The old-timers knew that deer came to fire sites. They did not know why. The why is mineral chemistry. The potassium and calcium in hardwood ash are the same elements deer travel a mile to find at a natural clay lick. Your campfire concentrates those elements into a handful of powder that you have been dumping in the trash or spreading on your garden for decades. One campfire produces enough ash for 3 to 4 stump treatments. One season of weekend fires produces enough for every property you hunt. The deer have been waiting for you to figure this out. Your grandfather already had. And when somebody at deer camp asks you what that white crust on the stump is, you can decide how much you want to tell them. Some things are worth keeping between you and the camera.